Jesus fell and prayed on his face. This is at least some sort of evidence that Jesus was a Muslim, right? Matthew 26 verse 39 says that Jesus, going a little farther, fell on his face and prayed. Is this Bible verse in the Gospel account of Matthew really evidence that Jesus was a Muslim then? By the end of this video, you'll see the foolishness of this claim. Firstly, we can agree that if you're going to take a specific verse from the Bible, at least take into context the actual book that it was written in, or even less, just simply the chapter that it was taken from. But for the sake of argument, before we even look at biblical context of this verse, let's just take a look at the snippet of Matthew 26:39 on its own, without even using any surrounding verses. When Jesus falls on his face to pray, does this show that he was a Muslim? Well, we do see Muslims doing this worldwide today, and to be fair in saying this is something that they've done for hundreds of years. But don't get too excited, boy. Although prostration is a Muslim practice, it's not the only religion with this tradition. Here's a shocker. In the 6 centuries before the lifetime of Muhammad, there's a ton of solid evidence to show that Christians, Catholic Orthodox Christians, prostrated and kneeled in prayer on a regular basis. Tertullian from around 200 AD wrote on prayer and mentions that prostrating is a practice done by many in prayer. St. Ephraim's prayer from around 300 AD is still practiced today in Orthodox churches, which instructs people to prostrate throughout. Even the First Church Council of Nicaea mentions that there are Christians who prostrate and kneel when praying. In fact, would you believe it if I said we also see this in some authentic hadith? We can conclude from this then that prostrating in prayer did not begin with Muslims. They are in fact the last apparent Abrahamic religion to practice such a thing from the 7th century onwards. If someone prostrates in prayer, it therefore does not prove in any way that they're a Muslim. Moreover, we need to ask the question, from records that we have, is this the only way that Jesus prayed? Did Jesus only prostrate in prayer? John 11:41 says, "And Jesus lifted up his eyes and said, 'Father, I thank you that you've heard me.'" John 17:1 said, "When Jesus had spoken these words, he lifted up his eyes to heaven and said, 'Father, the hour has come.'" Can you lift up your eyes in prayer as a Muslim? Is this how Muslims pray? Pretty sure Muhammad told you not to do that. What's ridiculous though, is that when Matthew 26 is used to justify Jesus being a Muslim, the context of just the surrounding verses are completely disregarded, mate. Even the end of the very same verse is brushed over as if it's not even there. This on screen is how many Muslims read the verse. This though is how the verses should be read. How about this though, right? We just simply finished the very verse in question, yeah? Look what it says. "And going a little farther, he fell on his face and prayed, saying, 'My Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will.'" Sorry, who? His father. So Allah is now a father. Jesus is claiming to be the son of Allah, the Father. What does the Quran have to say about this then? Surah 19 says, "And they say, the beneficent hath taken unto himself a son. Assuredly ye utter a disastrous thing, whereby almost the heavens are torn, and the earth is split, and the mountains fall in ruins, that ye ascribe unto the beneficent a son." Seems a little dramatic to be honest, mate. Anyway, Surah 112 says, "He has never had any offspring, nor was he born, and there is none comparable to him." So what we're seeing here is that if Allah did have a son, that would make the son comparable to him. Meaning that to call yourself the son of God would be to call yourself God in nature according to the Quranic standards. And the Quran says that he is not a father, nor is Jesus the son. That's clear. To make claim to being so is the worst of all sins in Islam, because you're putting yourself on a level with God. This is weird though, because Jesus does exactly this in verse 39. I think it's pretty obvious why the Muslim leaves this out now, right? So now let's look a little further into the context of the very book that the Muslim is appealing to as a standard of truth to evidence that Jesus is also a Muslim. Matthew 3 says, "And when Jesus was baptized, immediately he went up from the water, and behold, the heavens were opened to him, and he saw the Spirit of God descending like a dove. And behold, a voice came from heaven that said, 'This is my beloved Son.'" So as the first one, we have affirmation by the Holy Spirit and the Father that Jesus is the Son. Matthew 14:33 says, "And when they got into the boat, the wind ceased, and those in the boat worshipped him, saying, 'Truly you are the Son of God.'" Not only here did Jesus' Jewish disciples worship him, but they also called him the Son of God. Matthew 16:16, Jesus asked Peter, "Who do you say that I am?" And Simon Peter replied, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." So now Peter, the leader of the pack, who Jesus left as the leader of his church, also calls him the Son of God. In Matthew 27, we see Jewish people that aren't even followers of Jesus also affirming that he claims to be the Son of God. Look, verse 42 to 43 says, "He saved others, he cannot save himself. He is the King of Israel. Let him come down now from the cross, and we will believe in him. He trusts in God. Let God deliver him now if he desires him." Ready? "For he has said, I am the Son of God." Matthew 27 also shows a Roman centurion confirming this too. He literally says, "Truly, this was the Son of God." Are you sure that you want to continue using the account of Matthew as some sort of historical evidence that Jesus was a Muslim because he prostrated? Do you see how stupid this is yet? It's the same book which gives us evidence at that time that not only did Jews and Romans affirm Jesus' claims to be the Son of God, but the 12 disciples, Peter, the head of the church, the Holy Spirit, and the Father himself all refer to Jesus as the Son of God. Not to mention in this book alone, Jesus refers to God as his Father 44 times. Here's a fun bit of biblical context to add to this too. What about the angel Gabriel, who, by the way, was allegedly the one who gave Muhammad his revelation? Luke 1 says this, "In the 6th month, the angel Gabriel was sent from God to a city in Galilee, to a virgin betrothed. The angel said to her, 'Do not be afraid, Mary, for you have found favour with God. And behold, you will conceive in your womb and bear a son, and you shall call his name Jesus.'" Ready for this part? "He will be great and will be called the Son of the Most High." Even the angel Gabriel calls Jesus the Son of God. So now can we say that a blasphemous angel gave Muhammad his revelation? John the Baptist is also considered a prophet of Islam too, no? Well, how about in John 1:31, where he says, "And I have seen and I have borne witness that this is the Son of God." So now a prophet of Islam sees Jesus as the Son as well. This isn't looking good, mate. Listen, to use the Bible as some sort of evidence to prove that Jesus is a Muslim is foolish. It's to disregard every piece of context and is the definition of cherry picking. What's interesting though is that in Islam it is believed that the prophets are protected by Allah from teaching such blasphemy. So if Jesus really is a prophet of Islam and the Quran is correct, then we'd expect that Jesus would have made it extremely clear that he was not the Son of God, right? We would expect that Jesus' followers and those around him from the time would never have thought such a thing. We already know from the historical accounts of the Bible that this isn't the case. But how about outside of the canonized scriptures? There are literally thousands of external sources and quotes from the first followers of Jesus in the 1st and 2nd centuries. Ignatius of Antioch, Clement of Rome, Polycarp of Smyrna, Papias, Justin Martyr, Irenaeus, Clement of Alexandria are just a few of the apostolic fathers whose writings overwhelmingly support that Jesus was the Son of the Most High. They weren't Muslims, boy. Even amongst some heretical groups such as Gnostics, Nestorians and Monophysites, to name just a few, we have evidence that they even believed, as the alleged followers of Jesus, that he was actually the eternal Son. Again, if Jesus was inspired by Allah as a prophet, and he was protected from committing shirk, he would have made his message clear enough to confirm that he was not in any way the Son of Allah. Why is it then that all historical evidence we have from the first 2 centuries after his crucifixion goes against this? Why is it that all of his followers, and even those who didn't follow him, affirmed his claims to be the Son of God? Remember as well, if he did in fact make these claims, then he is not a prophet of Islam, and the Quran is then proven to be false. Here's a little question before I conclude. Do you know where else in the book of Matthew prostrating in worship is mentioned? I'll give you the answer, boy. First though, remember by Islamic standards it is not permissible to prostrate to anyone but Allah. Well, Matthew 2 says this, "When they saw the star, they rejoiced exceedingly with great joy, and going into the house they saw the child with Mary his mother." Ready? "And they fell down and worshipped him." The men who went to see Jesus as a newborn baby fell down, prostrated, and worshipped him. To conclude then, Jesus prostrating in prayer is one of the most called upon verses by Muslims in Matthew 26. But to use this verse as some sort of standard of evidence to support the Islamic version of Jesus is completely ignorant. When this claim is made, it's done so void of any form of historical context, whilst disregarding the entire book of Matthew which is appealed to. Once again, we see a Quranic and Islamic claim made about Jesus, which is done so without anything to authenticate it. I understand that it's a fallacy to claim that something is false simply because there isn't evidence supporting it. But with Islamic claims about Jesus in particular, this isn't all that it is. It's not just a proclamation made about Jesus' life without evidence proving its authenticity. It's an assertion made where all historical and biblical context suggests that Muhammad's claims were completely false. The only way you can honestly continue to believe that Jesus was a Muslim is to use circular reasoning yet again and disregard what history and overwhelming evidence shows, to just believe what Muhammad said 600 years after Jesus' life. You cannot honestly use the Bible or early century writings from Jesus' followers to evidence that Jesus was a Muslim. So at least, if you still think that Jesus is a Muslim, just admit that you believe it because your unlettered prophet said it was true, and that you don't have any other evidence to support your claim. That's at least more respectable, mate.